Today, we discuss media literacy and its crucial role in fighting fake news, with a special emphasis to building resilience of young people towards disinformation and misinformation. Today, with me in no particular order are Maja Zarić, media expert, Natasa Kilibarda, science journalist and fact checker at Istinomer, Aleksandra Dragutinović, media literacy trainer, and Zsolt Rabai, Brussels-based expert, senior vice president and International Center for Development and Democratic Transition Foundation. Thank you all for joining us. And yes, of course, I forgot supervising us today, and Dr. Miloš Savin, president of New Leaders for Stability and Trust. Welcome all. And we could start with Mr. Zsolt. Could we start with that? How can we define fake news or disinformation?
Yes. Hello to everybody. Thank you very much for this question. I think it is extremely important because today we are talking a lot about disinformation, misinformation, fake news, whatever. But I think that before we start to discuss about it, it would be good to define what we are talking about. Because there are too many talks about it, but I doubt that people really verify the content. Now, if I look at the Cambridge Dictionary, what is under fake news? This is false stories that appear to be news spread on the internet or other media. And usually they are created to influence political views or just as a joke. Sometimes it might be quite dangerous, the joke, because some jokes are looking so realistic that after a while many people might think they are real. Now, the disinformation is a false information spread in order to deceive people. So practically it is targeted fake information. And there is the misinformation, which might also happen. And I think that we should also talk about it because many people, when they are forwarding messages on social media, quite often they do not control and they just send further some misinformation, which is simply without any bad intention. It is just wrong information or fact that people are misinformed. So practically, those are the three categories that we are mentioning when we are talking about media literacy.
Okay, thank you. Natasa, could you tell us how hard is it actually to see the truth behind the headline, behind, how to see what is really all about when we just see?
Yes, that might be a straightforward question with a yes or no short answer, but if you go the easy way with just reading the headline, well, it's pretty hard. You might actually think that reading the headline, and if you digest your information and only through social media digests or only through headlines, well, that's pretty hard. So if you go the easy way, it's hard. But if you read the beyond the headlines and actually check your material and sources, and even if you don't fall for the hard visuals, strong visuals, and just read into it, well, you might say it's the hard way, but you can spot it easily, and through experience, you can easily find the methods they're using for. So it's in a kind of, we messed up already, so I cannot say it's easy. Many false news and fake information sources are now being sophisticated. They don't really, you don't really know what's actually, on a first glance, don't really know what's fake or not. So you have to dig deeper.
Okay, thank you. Maja, is there a difference in how different generations consume the news nowadays. Probably there is, like how boomers consume it, how Generation X consume it, because they're newer and the digital natives. How is it? Where is the difference?
Thank you for this question. It's quite different. For example, when I hold workshops in pre-university institutions, I always ask the youth, so to say, how do they consume news and information? And Generation Z and the millennials, they always use as a source actually social networks. So that is something that is quite different to the generation that is, for example, 40 plus. And if we go even further, for example, the elderly, they are more turned to traditional media, especially in the so to say COVID crisis era. What we witnessed was actually the return of the trust into traditional media as a source of news for at the beginning in 2020 for families, but not for the younger generations. So they're mostly getting predominantly news, like 70% of the youth, they get it online from social media.
And that is why, since it's hardest to check on social media if the news is truth or fake, that is what makes them
yes, there are many problems that are related to that, because at the age that they are, for example, if we're talking about teenagers, their critical thinking is just developing, and they cannot always understand the context of the information they're actually having, and they don't have this vision of having 17,000 information in 4 hours that they spend on the internet. The amount of time that they spend online is tremendous. They actually, according to, for example, Ofcom research, they spend between 4.5 and 5 hours a day online, but not for education. Pure fun. So that's divided between being on Instagram, the TikTok, or some other network, and gaming. So while they're doing that, they don't have the attention span checking wisely and carefully the information. They look at the picture, they see, for example, the first two sentences, they jump into assumptions, they share, not quite often, not carefully share the information. And Zsolt talked about it, like not carefully sharing the information, it creates that viral spread of disinformation. And we have many aspects that we actually need to carefully tackle as a society, both with the younger and older generations.
Thank you. Aleksandra, how would you describe the current situation regarding media literacy and young people in Serbia?
I was saying the situation has been improving, and a lot of individuals, governmental and non-governmental organizations have started to tackle this issue. Maya raised some great points about the way they use information, and I believe that the number and the exponential growth of platforms from which they consume information, that we need to address that first in order to understand what is their approach, how are they spending their time. She also mentioned the critical thinking abilities and skills. They're still developing, and there are ways to kind of, well, not shape their opinion, but guide them in the right direction. So I personally know a lot of organizations that are having some strategic approach and working on this, educating the whole, let's say, classes, like Novi Sad School of Journalism. They have been fighting fake news for a long time, and it's something that is present in all age categories, of course, but it's really specific to the youth, because we need to adapt the approach and adapt the tools and strategies. So overall, I'd say it's quite bad, because nothing is really systematically tackled. There are no ways they can learn about this in school, let's say, and I believe this should be something a child can learn, because a lot of children age 2 already know to play a YouTube video, and that's kind of what's scary if you really think about it, because they kind of automatically adopt this information, and it can be better. We are all working on it, but I really need to emphasize that over the last 2, 3, or 5 years, let's say, the awareness has drastically raised on the topic, and I'm really glad it's like that, but we will find ways to improve it more.
Thank you. Mr. Rabai, can you tell us more about why people fall so easily under the influence of fake news and disinformation?
I think that people are very much influenced by fake news and disinformation, because especially disinformation is designed for the target audience. And researchers, psychologists are saying that there is a hierarchy of needs of people. So the basic is the food, water, shelter, sleep. Then the next level is the need of feeling safe, then belonging to some group, being loved, then the accomplishment, the next level, the fact that we matter, and the destiny. So practically, the communicators, when they want to design a disinformation campaign, they are targeting an audience, and they are taking a combination of those needs. If you look at the disinformation, I mean, you will see very well how some of them are masterpieces of targeted communication, taking into consideration those basic needs. And what else? Also, whom we are listening at. Who are the people who are the opinion leaders for us? Why we believe? Because there is always, or somebody who is talking is a person which has authority in our eyes, or is considered as an expert. People that we like. So if we receive from somebody whom we like, a friend of some, we have some parental link through social media, obviously we tend to believe in, because this person is credible for us. Or interestingly enough, we tend to believe to people who are confirming what we believe or what we think anyway. So then it's quite funny thing, because if we see a news that is confirming our thinking, we don't even try to check the reality, because we want to believe in those news, and we see as a confirmation of what we think is real. And interestingly enough, people who are expressing the opinion of the majority of our surrounding, so they are listened much more than people who have minority opinions, and we tend to believe in those information. And of course, people who are appealing on emotions. I think that especially when we are talking about, for example, Hungary, where I am from, or the Western Balkans, we know that our people are extremely emotional, and they are ready to form an opinion immediately and having a very emotional reaction immediately. And it is very difficult to change those emotional reactions by simply telling, oh, sorry, guys, those are the facts. This is not what you heard. So I think that partially this is the reason why people fall under the influence of disinformation, because actually they are very well targeted and designed for reaching out to a certain target audience.
Thank you, Maja. I guess you agree with the most things that Mr. Rabai said. Is there anything that you would like to add? And especially additional question: is there a cure for that, for falling under the influence of fake news?
Well, I agree, of course, with all of that Zsolt said. I would point out that there is also another aspect that is critical for our believing in fake news, and that is when, and Zsolt had also mentioned it, when people that we believe share the news. But it's also, I think, very important of people to be aware of the way that social networks and also gatekeepers, or let's say research functions based on recommendation systems. And what they do is they create these echo chambers. So we are only seeing what we actually believe and what we search for, and we're associated to those kind of groups and those kind of research that we do. So that is also something that is feeding our stereotypes and prejudice. So that is a very difficult cycle to break. And to answer your question, actually, what do I think is the only thing that can break it is actually two things. One is education, and the second thing is actually networking. So we need to create networks, we need to create synergies in order to actually coordinate activities on the field and to have the maximum impact of those activities. To answer it short.
Yeah, thank you. Natasa, could you tell us what is the definite sign? Is there a definite sign that something is fake news? And if there is, how can we search for those signs?
Well, as Zsolt and Maja said, it's rather complex. So not really a rather definite sign, but many signs. But if you only glance it, if something goes viral and it sounds too good and too bad to be true, well, it possibly isn't true. If you happen to read the whole news and it doesn't have any resources and lack any resources, any to back up that claim, yeah, that's suspicious. You should check it up, or at least try to be. If we are looking for signs, I mean, we are going to talk about further along the conversation about how we can spot it and how to fight it. But yeah, there is no definite signs. But if something is too sensational and if it's too strong and too bad, too good to be true, where you should something red flag should be rising.
Okay, thank you. Can you tell us what are the steps that each of us can take in order to check if the news is fake or not? I know it can be long, but can we make it short? Just, okay, I've seen the headline, it goes completely with everything that I believe in. So I want to believe that the news is correct. Why would I do anything to prove myself wrong?
Question for me.
Yeah, if you can tell us just
if your bias is strong, yeah, well, that is a good question. But if we are constantly being fooled, maybe I don't know. Maybe we should check our own biases. I don't know. My personal belief is that I am curious. I want to be a detective, and it's so many lies along the internet. And if my way to approach it is pretty much straightforward. But I am experienced now, and I can spot it right away. But if we're talking about the youth, as Maja and Zsolt said, they spent a lot of time online, but they don't know how to actually diverse it now. It's a wild forest there. Maybe we should choose to talk along the line, but I don't want to take any more time with this.
Okay, Aleksandra, how does the fact that young people are digital natives help in their education on this topic?
Yes, exactly what Natasa was talking about. It was a really complex thing to find a way. And I mean, I'm not saying that I did, but I'm trying to develop some strategies to approach them on their level to make it interesting. I believe that the fact that they are digital natives is actually a double-edged sword, because even though they understand technology, they use it on a daily basis, people who grew up never knowing a day without it, and constantly being surrounded with technology, software tools, all of the apps, I believe that they are more used to automation, and that it's reflected in various ways, wide range, but including more automatically what someone presents them, especially in terms of information, and especially if found on the internet. Someone also mentioned their attention span is shorter, and along the lines of everything we've mentioned, they're more easily distracted. It can be really challenging for them to make something that they might not even be interested in learning, to present it in that way, to approach their education to be interesting, to make it seem relevant, and to show them the consequences of what happens if they don't. We're talking about a lot of, I mean, there are different categorizations, but it's not only propaganda and political stances. It's something that you might buy, or you might use, that will straightforward ruin some part of your potential and your value. So it's vital to use those tools and apps, well, not against them, but kind of against them, but for their benefit, and to understand what works for them. For example, on several projects, I brought some influencers to talk about the topic, because only by seeing their name, they were already more interested to find out what are they going to talk about, what's the core issue, because they follow those influencers. They spend most of their day online, and we need to better understand the platforms. And something that I found that plays maybe the best role is gamification. We make it like Natasa said, we try to make them look like detectives to themselves. We present it in a challenging way. We do some things, the combination of online and in person, even when we are gathered in a place. While I'm educating groups of young people, I always use they always use apps and software, and it always try to find relevant examples for them, because if I present some piece of information that is I don't know, on the political agenda for the day, they're not going to be interested. If it's automatically boring, they're not even going to try to engage. So I believe that like I said, gamification and those apps, common interests, that's something that we need to learn about the focus group in order to help them educate themselves.
Thank you. Mr. Rabai, what can an individual do not to fall under the influence and not to become a victim of disinformation or fake news?
I think it is not very easy because, as I mentioned, there are some psychological factors that already help us to believe in fake. But if we think, and I think this is that should be the first section, when we see something that might be a little bit suspicious, that it might not be totally real or might be not as it is written. Stop and think. Stop and think, especially because one characteristic of disinformation is that there is always a little piece of the truth to make it more credible. So the entire news is not fake. It is just a little bit transformed, a little bit manipulated. Then at the end of the day, the information becomes totally different than the basic little core information. Then if you are a little bit suspicious, then check the source, because very often they are referring in those news on something. This newspaper or that scientist said this or that, or this politician said this or that. If you Google on it, and that is quite simple, quite often you can see that indeed, maybe this politician said something similar, but it was in a totally different context. It was maybe 10 years ago and not now. And he was talking about something totally different. But that's true that the sentence that they were referring to was in his speech 10 years ago in a different context and talking about a different topic. So check the source, try to search on people who are mentioned in this news. Try to search also on the name of the newspapers, magazines, scientific magazines. Try find the original article or the source of the information. And I would say that check also if there are some grammatical mistakes, because quite often artificial intelligence used for trolls does not recognize the proper grammatic rules, and there might be some wrong utilization of capital letters or mismatched fonts, and so on and so forth. That might be also a sign of some fake news or disinformation. And I would like to highlight here that if you are not sure that the information that you are reading is correct, then rather don't share it, because otherwise you will become a part of the chain, of the distribution chain of this fake news.
Thank you. Natasha, what are the biggest lies told in the media that most people choose to believe? Can we discuss in the names, let's just say?
I have a little add up for Zsolt. I will be short. Maybe my biggest take on how to know if something is fake or how to approach it is to read. When you read online media horizontally rather than vertically, what does it mean? Open up as many tabs as you need. Check every claim that seems suspicious, even if it's not suspicious. Check what's the portal you are reading at. That, as I said earlier, they're sophisticated. They are sneakier. They are designed to look like trustful source. So check the impressum, who is funding it, who runs it. Then maybe you should, and the two biggest take-ons on this is to check your biases. I know it's difficult, it's really difficult. One, trust the process on it and improve your Google or any browser skills. That's my 2 cents on it. And what are the biggest lies? Oh, the competition is strong and tough. Well, we are living in the pandemic, so I won't be leave you off without the vaccine. Any vaccine claim since MMR to COVID vaccines, but just yesterday, so this one beat it all. I read it on Serbian Twitter that if you need to take the vaccine, You should check, you should take alcohol, straight up alcohol, and to kill the lipid spike protein. So,
I mean, people are getting cures, are drinking like medicines for horses in order to
ivermectin, So that just leave me speechless, but I'm not even surprised anymore at this point. So, but I must have a few categories on the conspiracy and the biggest lies we are facing it today. When we are speaking about vaccines, that's something that impacts a lot of people's health and well-being, and we are in pandemic, so we are now what we are talking about. But there are certain conspiracy theories. I'm not even trying to belittle any, and any conspiracy theory is not naive. It's not. It's dangerous as it is, but certain conspiracies, as vaccine or any anti-vaxxer agenda, cannot be really get in line with, let's say, flat Earth society. That is dangerous because it lacks logic, critical thinking, and those people are very, very stubborn into believing that Earth is not a pancake, for say. But if I can say what's the biggest, it's the most dangerous one. It's the one that impacts many people's health and well-being.
Definitely, yes. So, Maja, we can stay on this topic and tell us, why is building resilience to fake news that important, and what are the biggest consequences of media illiteracy?
Well, I think that we heard just a while ago Natasha saying that well-being and public well-being is actually very, very important and crucial to all states, so to say. So I think that I need to state that actually the society has such an important task of preventing or tackling disinformation in certain ways, and also empowering on the other side the citizens to react and to be resilient to it, in order to actually have citizens who can make healthy, informed choices, be it political, economical, private, or whichever type of choices. So in order to have an active citizenship that is engaged into today's society, you need to build resilience on one side. You need to educate them, to empower them with knowledge, with certain set of skills. But on the other side, you also need to have the network of all key stakeholders in this field. That means public policymakers, that means the industry, that means academia, that means donor community, and they all need to work together. So that builds, because, for example, we just heard the Twitter problem of yesterday, and for example, a good example on how to prevent or how to tackle this kind of disinformation on Twitter is the case study that Twitter actually last year provided their users, so to say, but also educators, with handbook on media literacy that Twitter produced together with UNESCO. So the part of education needs to be embedded for the users of the social networks. But that also has to be done with policymakers together. So they need to find the joint ground, so to say, on certain kind of rules. And I think that what we've seen in the last 2 years is a movement that, for example, the European Commission has this code of conduct that has been signed by many platforms by now. And also they are introducing the certain type of regulation for platforms that are relevant to the content that might be potentially harmful for the youth. So the protection of minors is getting higher on the agenda of all certain stakeholders, and I think that we as a society need to enforce that.
Exactly. That was actually my next question for Alexandra. Also, Alexandra, in your opinion, who plays the most important role in the education of youth and media literacy and in developing critical thinking abilities in general?
Yes, I really like that. I'm just gonna follow Maya on this one because it's basically everyone's role. Of course, everything starts from home, and I think it's not something that will definitely determine one's path on this media literacy road. But if you have a proper role model at home, someone who shows you how to develop the skills of critical thinking, it's not even directly related to media, but people which are already in front of those of who's let's say if you have a parent or anyone else living in your house that consumes media in an unhealthy way, the chances are more likely you will start doing so too. But that's not even, that wouldn't even be the problem if this issue is tackled through the course of education on a level of an institution, because the problem, I believe the most important problem is that it's not a single course. You cannot teach, you cannot have a subject on media literacy. It needs to be integrated within each and every course and subject, and moreover, educators need to be educated on how to do that. There are certain movements as well that are dealing kind of with this issue, and there is a project that I've been part of where media literacy trainers, master trainers who trained us, they conducted education in 10 high schools and 10 elementary schools and research center Petnica, and it's currently spreading. They're doing lots more work on educating educators. So I think that would be our next stop. So from home and parents, role models, someone in their nearby environment, to education. But the third and the most important thing that I believe is the system. The government needs to make some regulations. There should be a license for someone to be a journalist. I mean, of course, that social media and other aspects that are not journalism based per se are played a major role, but a lot of journalists are not doing that their job properly. They're not doing their research. They're doing some things on purpose. There's a political bias in the ownership of media, and that influences each and every one of us. And Maya talked about raising standards. I really do believe that if this problem is tackled on a basis of institutions, and if it's made to be an obvious problem, even included as a problem and presented as a problem on traditional media, on social media, and like the Twitter's policy, like to allow people to educate themselves, at least those who might want to. There will be some people, of course, who will be uninterested in raising their levels of education, who might even enjoy being biased and are fully aware of that. But the strategic approach would actually allow people who want to make a difference and to educate themselves on the topic, how to find a source, how to check your data, how to like spot those red flags. And I think Natasha was mentioning, if something sounds like a clickbait, it probably is. And just like to to help them share the knowledge and to institutionalize the topic to start from the earliest stage, because that's something that we all need to, that needs to grow as we grow and evolve as we evolve, because we cannot, as the global society, we cannot raise our standards and use our full potential while there are people living in all of these misconceptions, whether on purpose or not.
Yeah, exactly. I would like to stay a bit more on this topic. So Maja, I would have another question for you. Since, you know, media literacy, learning about it now is on voluntarily based. So everyone who wants to learn can learn, but obviously many people want to stay, you know, uninformed or misinformed or with their beliefs that they have. Do you think potential solution would be making media literacy mandatory, like putting it in elementary schools, in high schools, and so on? Maja, the question would be for you if you can.
Yes, yes. Thank you for this question. It's an excellent one. Well, well, first of all, I need to say that I'm aware of the certain changes within the system that have been happening in the past few years. And since 2020 January, we have a new handbook on media literacy for pre-university education. That means preschool, elementary school, plus high school. And in January, as I was informed, it was distributed to schools from the Ministry of Education. So that was the first step. And as Aleksandra actually noticed, it was done in a very good way. And that is not as a separate subject, but it was a cross-curricular thing. So you would have, for example, teachers from, I don't know, it's first grade or fifth grade or secondary school having topics, and then where they can actually in which classes they can talk about these topics, and they have also their working sheets within this handbook. But there is quite a long way from distribution to implementation. So there is a step that needs to be done, and that is motivating the actually teachers to use that. Because I personally noticed that each time when I hold my workshops in schools, the teachers they give me practically more or less same classes. It's either Serbian or it's something that they miss, or so they need to be aware of all of the subjects that they can teach media literacy within. That's first. The second, they need to be released of being afraid to teach it, because it's the first time actually that kids know a lot, you know, of the topics comparing to teachers. And teachers are used to knowing all the answers. And in certain way, in media information literacy field, it's a field as such developing quite fastly because of the technological development. And you cannot have all of the answers all the time. So they need to be taught the new approach of actually communicating with kids together and finding with certain points together the solution. So for example, they need to be also trained. So I expect that in the following 2022, the government will have special trainings for teachers to use the handbook that they can already use, but also in order to motivate them and to better prepare them to use them within the pre-university education. And I think it's really, really important, because we already heard the 2-year-olds, they can use YouTube. They do, and they do more than it's recommended. And for the children age under 2, it's not recommended at all by the World Health Organization. So we need also to educate the parents, because parents, that's essential. I mean, they can learn at school, but if they come back to the family that it's, you know, staring at TV or not talking because they have their phones on, and just like the line of communication is disrupted, or if a kid wants to share what he or she does online, and then the mom or dad says, oh, TikTok, I don't want to hear about it. You know, I mean, the communication just stops. So we need to educate parents on one side, and also the formal and non-formal education. Like, this is such a great webinar. I enjoyed every minute of it. And I'm sure that people will get so much in terms that they will be inspired to search for more information. So non-formal information and informal is extremely important. And also, I think the corporations, businesses, industries, we need to have media on board, but also gaming and other corporations, because we have seen the rise of e-commerce in last 2 years very, very high. And all of these companies can benefit from media literate citizens for their own activities. So I think I go back to my thesis from the start, networking. So that would be my answer.
Thank you. Mr. Rabai, what are the Western countries doing actually for fighting disinformation? Can you give us the insider information?
Yes, it's an interesting question, because if I'm looking at the European countries or North America, I mean, we can see that politicians are not always interested in blocking fake news, because sometimes they are spreading some fake news. Let's see, maybe with their best knowledge, because they are just not knowledgeable enough, or they didn't check the information. But for example, the COVID information that we could hear from the president of Brazil, it created, I would say, a lot of victims, because people believed him, because he had the authority, he was the president. And unfortunately, what he was telling about COVID was totally false, especially what he was talking about it at the beginning. But on the other hand, we realized, I mean, Western European countries, and also I think most of the Central European countries, that there are some foreign countries that are organizing specific disinformation targeting our population. Here we are talking a lot about Russia. Already a few years ago, the European Parliament received a briefing material that warned that Moscow was seeking to undermine unity, destabilize the democracies, and erode trust in democratic institutions by hybrid tools using fake news and disinformation as well. But also we could mention the Chinese promotion of their political systems that they are also using. Now, interestingly enough, not all the countries or not all the Western European countries' governments are considering it so important. There are some, for example, Italy, Hungary, and Slovakia, who does not recognize really the Russian disinformation operations so dangerous for the population. However, we can see on some concrete examples that they are really polarizing our society, which is anyway now a little bit in a phase of polarization. Now, we could see concrete examples in 2016, for example, in the Netherlands, when they were preparing a referendum on the EU-Ukraine Association Agreement, or in Germany in 2017, when during the general elections, some Russian influenced media was specifically promoting very polarizing issues, polarizing even more the German society than it was anyway. Or just recently, I read in a news in September 2021 an interesting claim. This was by RIA Novosti. news agency, the Russian state-owned news agency, which was saying, I'm just reading the material, that according to the outlet, food riots are looming in Europe. Now, this is according to the outlet because this was a report from the European Union. And the quotation, an artificially created shortage, price hike of foodstuffs, hunger riots, all these are classic instruments of the US government for creating controlled chaos in various countries. Now, knowing what we are talking about, that recently, as a consequence of Brexit in UK, you could see some shortages in some products, but immediately, the little truth is there was created considerable news that, voila, this is the US government's well-known tactic to create chaos and undermine. But if you start to think of why US would like to undermine the UK order, I mean, it has no sense because they are probably the closest allies. So, but anyway, but it sounds good. If you want to believe that this is a typical tactic of the US, then it's a perfect news. So there are very clear examples of disinformation efforts. Now, when Western European countries would like to handle this issue, I mean, they meet several dilemmas. One dilemma is how to increase the control over the societies, over the media, over social media, but at the same time, to assure the fundamental rights that the EU countries are standing for, or the Western countries like United States as well. So the freedom of expression. So on one hand, lots of people are saying, yes, we should control, control, control. On the other hand, they say, no, we cannot control more because we are standing for freedom, freedom of expression. This is a big dilemma to find this very tiny border. Now, again, when we are talking about other extremist organizations who are also creating a lot of fake and disinformation, how to handle and tolerate in a democratic society, a free society, individuals of movements that are actually denying democracy and free society. So can we really stop them? You have no right to talk. When on the other hand, we are saying, no, but in our society, everybody has the freedom of opinion and you can talk and express what you think. NATO's dilemma. NATO realized already since years that there are those disinformation operations that are harming the resilience of our countries. Yes, and NATO already accepted that the cyberspace is under Article 5. Article 5, this is the common defense practically when somebody is attacked, that all the countries are considering it as an attack against themselves, and they make common steps. But where is the threshold? How to react if this is just a disinformation that might cause very serious harm? Even maybe it can cause deaths because, for example, fake information about the vaccination, or you are undermining trust in the vaccination process, and so on and so forth. That can cause death. But how to react? It's very difficult to decide on behalf of NATO, which is a traditional defense organization, but mainly was using military tools and not the civilian tools. So it is quite a dilemma. Now, some EU and NATO countries established special units, or they developed special strategies to counter disinformation, like the UK or Lithuania, Estonia, or the Czech Republic. Now, others, France or Germany, they accepted special legislation because they realized that there was direct intervention into their election process. and they wanted to stop it. As I mentioned, some other countries like Italy, Hungary, or Slovakia, I mean, they do not really recognize that maybe Slovakia now is a different case already, but they do not really recognize the Russian, the harm of the Russian disinformation efforts. The EU as an organization established a so-called, in 2015, established a so-called East Stratcom Task Force, and they are analyzing the disinformation, the most recent disinformation campaigns, and they are reporting about it. So if you are going to the internet and you look at Disinformation Review EU, then you will find the most recent analysis of this EU unit. What are the major disinformation campaigns right recently that they could realize and they could analyze. Now, interestingly enough, as you know, NATO is working based on some common assets. That means that the member states are putting together their efforts, and they are creating some common tools that they can use. And also NATO is relying on the individual assets of the member states. Now, surprisingly enough, or maybe it is not surprising, but fighting or countering the disinformation, NATO did not create any common asset. So practically countering disinformation is the hand of the individual member states. What NATO can do at this moment on this field, creating some fact sheets concerning its own operations and activity, and also coordinating a little bit the member states' efforts, the messaging, the attacks that they realize, and so on and so forth, but not much more. I would say that here there is much more emphasis on the civil society, and civil society can do much more. There are now already in more than 40 countries some more than 100 fact-checking NGOs, and they are doing an extremely valuable work. And I think that this is something that we should and we could encourage even further, because they are really independent, at least at this moment, and they are a credible source of information. They can develop very good techniques and help people to find what is fake and what is not fake. So I think that civil society, organizing civil society, organizing fact-checking NGOs, that is one of the most efficient solutions.
Thank you, Mr. Rabai. Since you mentioned the fact-checking, I would like to ask Natasa. Young people don't really like to do that boring stuff, which is learning, and that they don't like to do anything that is, associated with learning. So they don't want to invest their time or anything. So is there a way to make that fact-checking sexy for them? Let's just say it like that.
Well, I would like to know the concrete answer to that. I think that everyone will benefit from knowing the answer and the cure to fight the infodemia, especially among young people. But I think we have many ideas. We already heard many, even today. So it's been helpful even for me. But first thing, it's knowing that we have the problem and approach it from the basics and systematically. Aleksandra mentioned gamification. I think that's pretty good way how to step and started from the first step, from the basics, maybe covering every historical fact, false information, learning how to debunk many previous false information in order to combat the new ones. I know that many young people and Gen Z especially like true crime documentaries and Squid Game. So maybe we can try to go their own way. I said I like to be a detective, that maybe some of they can, but that's my bias maybe. Maybe we should try different approaches. There is not a single one. This is not a modern issue, but I know we have to try many different approaches to know what's more. And maybe we can learn from many European countries, Scandinavian countries that are already doing it, like Finland maybe. And Zsolt mentioned many other states. If we are talking about Serbia, we are not doing it. So maybe we can, not at least for now, not now at this point at least. So we can learn from others and and we can learn from other experience and learn and trust the process along the way. Gamify, being detectives, I don't know. Science especially suffers from it. And what I learned from this is that you cannot trust even any scientists. Many people make mistakes, and we, as I said, as we all said, this needs to be systematic. We haven't until the pandemic knew which way science actually works. What we already knew is that science now works, and we just have almost immediate results. But there's science works in many years, even decades, to find the perfect solution. So it's not just A to B. We have to know the scientific methods behind how are we going to find the truth. It's not just black and white. And many people don't know that, especially youth.
After all, MMR controversy initially started from the scientist who was doing everything to, everything that he finds would go with what he initially started with as an idea. Maja, I would like to, since you mentioned how different generations differently consume the news. So, and you said that most of them are now learning and getting their information on social media. Twitter has done something good on that field, where they now are marking the media that is connected to the government, or they are asking you to read the news before retweeting it if you just saw the headline, so you would get informed. On the other hand, there was a whistleblower in Facebook who said that Facebook actually doesn't want to fight fake news because it is good for them. So do you think that maybe putting some some structure into social media, let's put it that way, so if Facebook gets punished for what they have done, and if Twitter gets praised for what they have done, do you think that is a good step forward in helping young people to?
I'm actually quite. It's quite difficult when we talk about Twitter labeling media. It poses many questions. So first of all, we pose the question: what were the indicators or actually bases on which they did that, and then how does it actually what kind of information it relates to their consumers? So in certain aspects that might also be a dangerous thing, because if you start labeling media in certain way or journalists in certain way, that can lead also to the questions of safety. So that is something that we cannot talk about in this quite a short time, or even comment in a certain way. So I'm just posing this question as a food for thought. And also in punishments, we have to be careful about the language that we actually use, because these are corporations. They are operating on certain kind of standards, rules, laws, bylaws. So I would have to take us to that, and I think that Zsolt also talked about it, and Aleksandra as well. What we need is actually regulation, certain kind of regulation, certain aspects of regulation, and mechanisms for that. So, for example, for now, certain platforms, if you their mechanism is you actually can report the content that shouldn't be there, so they need to take it off. For example, we also had in 2020 couple of companies, I think 400 companies, that actually withdrew their Facebook advertising, such as Coca-Cola and many great companies, for a couple of days. So Facebook actually had a punishment, as you said, by the corporations for not being effective in eliminating or blocking the hate speech online. So the mechanisms are different for different kinds of platforms. They're not always effective. But you know, it's also we have to know that it's not always a bad intention, or the platform outgrows the number of the users. For example, TikTok now has this council that they formed for the content. And they're trying to, because there are lots of harmful content, not potentially, but harmful content on TikTok. So they're trying to handle it, but you know, the technology is rapidly more rapidly than the legislation evolving, and then you have these migrations of people from platform to platform, and you also need to have all of these activities from many sides in order to tackle a certain kind of problem. So it's not an ad hoc solution. We need to try it as a society, many solutions, to see what's worked. For example, YouTube, they had this rated project a couple of years ago. So you as a user of a platform should report, and there was a whole project, but the engagement from the citizen side, from the user side, was not that high, so that was not a useful mechanism. Now you have, for example, representatives as a lawyer office in Serbia of Google, so you can report it to them. You have, for example, the number you can report your content to. But we need to see more maybe analysis of how it's actually working, whether that is something that works for the platform, for the content, for the users or not. And I think that finding the solution, the right solution, is quite difficult because of the emerging technologies. So I think it needs to be an ongoing process of keeping up with the high standards and just sharing the experiences and views between the, of course, policymakers on the one side, and also civil organizations, users, industry, academia. So it cannot be a standalone problem that can be solved through night.
Thank you. Since we are approaching to the end, I would like to ask Aleksandra one more question, and then I would like to, to make the full circle to have additional comments from all of you. If you have anything else to add, or if I missed to ask something that is important. So, Aleksandra, you've been working as a media literacy trainer for several years now, and from your experience, what is the difference that you see, and what are the steps that need to be taken immediately? You said it yourself that it all starts from home. Do you think that if we want to educate young people, we need to educate parents first, and to teach them more about media literacy? Because it is not anymore the thing just, if something is fake news, if you believe some gossip or something like that. This is something that is, influencing their lives, not just vaccines and so on. But for example, a few days ago, there was a day against the human trafficking, where one of the things that was highlighted as the most important and most dangerous are exactly the headlines in some news outlets that are creating just for this purposes, where it's being advertised like you have been given the free, I don't know, course or something like that, so give us a call. And then that is how victims of human trafficking are being made. So parents, I think it is very important I believe it is very important to educate them, to see the fake news, and to know what their kids are doing online or how they are getting their information. So I would like to hear your side of this.
Yes, I believe that the problem is vastly serious for as long as media is present, but that it has become even more dangerous with the how fast can that information spread. It has changed everything. The internet has changed the whole course of evolution, and we need to follow that. So it's not even about only the parents. It's about everyone. The biggest issue that I've found for now is that people are not aware of, they don't know what is media literacy. When you, they automatically assume that I'm going to guide them and say trust to these specific media sources and don't trust this one. It's not about that. We need to show the general audience that media literacy, what being media literate means. That it means having the strategies, having the tools to deconstruct fake news if needed. And even if you don't need to deconstruct them, you can only recognize them. We can start from there. We can start from sharing what would it mean for their lives. For example, when I'm doing, I forgot to say that my experience has been extremely positive. And I think one of the reasons is that while I'm educating young people, they find it easier to connect with me because we're similar age, let's say. And I've successfully educated over 200 young people and 100 more of general audience within this period. Because I always start my my training with the presentation. I make the PowerPoint presentation where I introduce myself, where every piece of information is false, just to show them how easy, and they all trust me because I'm smiling. I say, oh, this is me when I was at my master's studies in Copenhagen or something like that, and then a random picture online from something in Russia. And then I say that I photoshopped this translation of a book from Ivo Andrić, and I made it look like I've translated, and they believe me. And then I shatter their dreams and hope, and just like to engage them initially, and that's just something that we must do. We need to adapt to show them how easy it is to do that, how easy it is for fake news to spread. There's this amazing game called Get Bad News. It's a site actually, and then you are in the position of someone who creates and spreads fake news. It's a really interesting approach because you're like tweeting, and there are always two options. You can choose to, I don't know, pick on their emotions, or to create propaganda. And the more followers and reactions you have, then you can see on which path you can earn badges. And it's all gamified in a way that it's really amazing. So my overall experience has been great, but I did I did encounter many issues of the basic not understanding of what it is. And I think if we find a way to popularize and explain the very concept, because they really want to find out a lot of things. They find it interesting. They I don't know. I can see that they understand how it can affect them, and that it's really something dangerous. It's not anything we can joke about. For, like I said, in my opinion, as long as media exists, because once you show them and provide them tools, explain that you're not gonna give them something they need to learn, but to provide them tools rather for themselves to learn about it. And I think that's one of the best approach that we can, as someone who is dealing with the topic, that we can do them, and just like make it really clear, we're not we are fighting this with you. It's a common fight of us all, and that we will just do it better if there are more people involved.
Yeah, we are all in this together. Thank you, Aleksandra. Mr. Rabai, is there anything that you would like to add to the topic so we can round up?
Yes, thank you for the floor. I think that I would like to repeat once again. I think it is very limited what the states can do technically or legally. They might do more in education. But I would like to highlight the responsibility of the individuals who are the consumers of the news. And also their responsibility, what are the news they are forwarding and they are helping to spread. Now, saying this, again, I would like to highlight also the very, very useful role of the civil society and the non-governmental organizations, which can do a lot in helping fact-checking, especially in the case of some sensational news that are spreading very fast and might cause a lot of harm and damage.
Thank you. Maja, is there anything that you would like to add?
Well, I would like to conclude that, as we heard, we are actually in a post-truth era and post-digital era. So lifelong learning is already here, and we have to be accustomed that we will have to learn all of our life certain skills and certain knowledges, and that will definitely be in the field of media information literacy. So yes, it's on us, individuals, families, society as a whole, but definitely we have to work hard.
So if we want to create a better society, we have to be better first. Yes. Natasa, the floor is yours.
Because it's not easy, and we should learn from our previous mistakes and our current mistakes even. And once for all, young people are not digital natives. I'm thinking that just because they are young, we don't need to worry about educating them and how they should develop their critical thinking. We can only, by doing that, we can only produce not digital native, but digital orphans. And they will be only by themselves. They should be learning by trial and error, and even then, only if they really show will and interest in that learning. That is an issue. That is a challenge. And I know that, as Maja said now, focusing on education and on the development, on every single step of critical thinking is the only alternative we can have to avoid turning fake news and false information into our only legacy that will be perpetuated by the next generations, maybe.
Thank you all for joining us today and for speaking on this very important topic. And I hope that things will move forward and that we will improve when it comes to media literacy. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
It was a pleasure.
Bye.